Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How National Service Can Advance the Mission, Goals, and Capacity of Nonprofit Organizations. I'm Betsy Brand, Executive Director of the American Youth Policy Forum, and I'll be serving as the moderator of today's webinar. We are very excited to be co-sponsoring this webinar with our partner, Service Year Alliance. For those of you attending your first AYPF event, AYPF is a nonpartisan convener that brings policymakers, educators, and researchers together in order to facilitate dialogues that lead to more informed policy to improve the lives of America's youth, and particularly those who are traditionally underserved. If you are unfamiliar with Service Year Alliance, that organization is dedicated to making a year of service a common expectation and opportunity for all young Americans as a way to tackle important challenges while transforming their own lives. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly run through a few logistical points. In the event of any technical difficulties, you may dial 1-800-263-6317 to reach GoToWebinar's technical support line. And if you happen to lose connectivity at any point during the webinar, please just go ahead and use the same link to log back into the webinar. Excuse me. Throughout the webinar, we encourage you to type your questions for our presenters in the questions box on the screen, on the right of your screen, as we'll have a couple of scheduled breaks for Q&A. We'll try to get to all your questions throughout the presentations, and if we don't, we'll do our best to follow up after the webinar. Upon the completion of the webinar, the slides and recording will be posted on AYPF's website at www.aypf.org and on Service Year Alliance's website at www.serviceyear.org. This is the third webinar of a three-part series examining the benefits of a year of service. The first webinar focused on how service contributes to improving educational outcomes, and the second webinar focused on how a year of service helps prepare young adults for the workforce. The recordings of both webinars are available on AYPF's and Service Year Alliance's website. For the social media enthusiasts among us today, we will be live tweeting today's webinar, and we encourage you to join the conversation using the hashtag @LetUsServe and @ServiceYear, which you see on the screen. And also listed on the screen are the Twitter handles of today's presenters and their organizations. I'd also like to point out that links to various resources that our presenters mentioned during the webinar will be typed into the chat box on the right. So please check that for additional materials or information. So today's webinar is focused on how national service can contribute to advancing the mission, goals, and capacity of nonprofit organizations. So let's get started. I'll introduce the speakers in the order that they'll be presenting. First, we'll hear from Brooke Bonet, who's Director of Program Development with Service Year Alliance. Next, we'll hear from Jeff Brady, Manager of Volunteer Engagement from United Way Worldwide. And then Gretchen Vanderveer, Executive Director of Fair Chance, and followed by Eileen Conaboy, Acting Director, AmeriCorps VISTA Program at the Corporation for National and Community Service. After Eileen has finished her comments, Brooke will return to provide information about numerous resources that Service Year Alliance has developed to help nonprofits learn more about how national service can help their organizations. And as a reminder, we'll pause intermittently for audience questions and reserve some time at the end, so please be sure to send in your questions. Before I turn it over to Brooke, I want to mention that during Brooke's presentation, we will show a short video about a young man, Corey Benjamin, who did a year of service, and he talks about what his year of service meant to him and his future. So just a word on the video. For those listening in over your telephone, the audio for the video will actually come through your computer or device speakers. So please make sure that your computer speakers are turned on and don't hang up. And then once the video is over, the broadcast audio will resume over your telephone. So now I'd like to invite Brooke Bonet, Director of Program Development at Service Year Alliance, to the virtual podium. Brooke?
Thank you, Betsy, for the introduction. I'm honored to be here today and introduce the roles that Service Years play working with nonprofits, local government, community, and faith-based organizations making them operate more effectively and efficiently. I myself am a Teach for America alum, serving in Baltimore City for 2 years for my years of service. For the next few minutes, I want to set the stage for how service years provide supports to nonprofits and increase their specific capacities, helping you all develop stronger programs, build connections, grow sustainability, and leverage volunteers. Next slide, Betsy. So you might be asking yourself, next slide, please. Thank you. You might be asking yourself what a service year is, so we want to start out defining it. As you can see from this slide, but we like to use the word service year. We're speaking broadly about those year-long, full-time paid opportunities where an individual enrolls in tackling a pressing challenge and developing real-world skills. So right now there are about 65,000 full-time opportunities domestically and abroad to serve within programs, and there's lots of different types of opportunities out there covering all different types of issue areas and diverse geographic locations. We like to think about this as an extraordinary year that transforms your life while making a positive impact on the community, and I know it was for me. These are programs like Peace Corps, Youth Build, and hundreds of other AmeriCorps programs supported by the federal agency, the Corporation for National Community Service, and I'll talk more about it in a minute. These are programs such as Teach for America, City Year, Public Allies, as well as hundreds of positions that are funded through other means, so thinking about other federal agencies supporting them, state and local funding, as well as private philanthropy. Next slide. So talking a little bit more about those funding sources, I wanted to introduce the Corporation for National Community Service. So this is the federal agency. We refer to it as CNCS because it's a mouthful. CNCS's mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through service and volunteering. They help millions of Americans improve their lives and the lives of their fellow citizens through service by tackling our country's most pressing challenges. National service is seen as a cost-effective solution that taps the power of citizens to get things done. Their full and part-time AmeriCorps programs mobilize millions of community volunteers for the organizations they serve, increasing their reach and their impact. There are many programs that are part of CNCS, and there are two that we want to highlight. The first is the AmeriCorps State and National Program, and as well as AmeriCorps VISTA. These programs both give support to capacity building, and so we wanted to highlight them today. So a little bit more on AmeriCorps State and National. It's a grant program for schools, LEAs, state education agencies, nonprofits, state and local government agencies, universities and colleges, tribal nations, and other entities. And then later you're going to hear more directly from Eileen on VISTA, so I'll save that for her. With federal funding from CNCS, nonprofits across the country are using this proven human capital source to be able to increase their effectiveness and efficiency. The great news is it's not just CNCS that has funding opportunities for service year programs. We're finding more and more that there are non-CNCS federal programs, thinking about the Career and Technology Act, Technical Education Act, as well as my former agency where I was before Service Year Alliance, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development funding their own program. FEMA has a program. There's several other agencies that are funding programs, as well as state and local and private funding that's coming into play. The takeaway you should have is if you have a need, service years can be a strategy to help you solve that need. And there are many avenues for funding that you can tap into. So first and foremost is to identify what your need is and then build a service year model to address that need. So next slide, please. So why service years? Speaking about those needs, what are the kind of common capacity building needs that nonprofits need and that they struggle to address? Today, we're here to talk about the roles of service years in improving an organization's ability to deliver on their mission and achieve their impact. We know that nonprofits need strong, sustained capacity, and without that capacity, they can't succeed in meeting their goals. At Service Year Alliance, we want to showcase how service year programs support nonprofits. There's rigorous independent evaluations that have demonstrated that service year programs help nonprofits build their capacity in difficult areas, including leadership, fiscal management and fund development, evaluation and learning capacity, collaboration, communications, and technology, just to name a few. When you ask yourself, what do you need as an organization to be effective and efficient to better achieve your mission, we'll hope that you'll see that service years can be part of that answer. Next slide. Next slide, please. Great. So this is the video that Betsy talked about in the beginning. The great thing about service years is that it's not just an entity is addressing a need, but there's a young person who's also being impacted by this service. And so we wanted to show that right up front. Corey's a great example of this, showing how a service-year built his skills and his leadership potential. And we see this as a win-win, not just for the organization that needs that capacity, but also for the wider community and for that individual. So here's Corey. Corey was pre-med, and he used his service year to help focus on his next steps before applying to medical school. And he actually had a capacity building role, so we wanted to highlight that today through Public Allies, an organization that places with other nonprofit organizations. And Public Allies is an AmeriCorps state and national grantee with DNCS. So we'll go ahead and cue up that video. Awesome. I hope everybody was able to hear that. You're probably thinking, this sounds pretty good, right? There's funding available. It's a great way to address nonprofit and community capacity needs and for young people to acquire new skills. Can you tell me more about the evidence and give me some real life examples? So in a short minute, you're about to hear from two programs that are using services with AmeriCorps VISTA at the national level. Before we do, I wanted to share a couple examples of how service years have demonstrated impact over recent years. So the first one you'll see up here is Habitat for Humanity that runs a pretty big program. In one of their recent reports, how Habitat for Humanity affiliates expanded capacity for national service programs. The evaluation set out to determine whether hosting AmeriCorps members expanded Habitat for Humanity's affiliates capacity to serve communities across the United States. As you might imagine, the number of new homes built, the homes rehabbed were a key interest to Habitat for Humanity. The bottom line they were looking at had to do with the extent in which National Service Program increased the number of homes they were able to build and the efficiency in what they could build. But there was a second category of questions that had to do whether members felt that they had benefited from participating in the National Service Program. And the study found that hosting AmeriCorps members added capacity to the host organization, that it increased the likelihood of more home builds, more rehabs, more volunteers engaged. AmeriCorps members gained work and life skills such as home building and project management skills, and serving as an AmeriCorps member with Habitat for Humanity increased their interest in affordable housing development as a career. AmeriCorps members felt more connected to their communities and the families that they serve. So you see those different ways that service can have an impact. Next slide, please. And I'll show you one more example. This is CalServes, which is run out of the Napa County Office of Education, but it's a statewide program across California. The AmeriCorps Volunteer Infrastructure Program is one of the programs that they run, and it was developed to build the volunteer capacity of nonprofit and educational organizations serving across the state of California. AmeriCorps VIP has placed hundreds of members in community organizations with a specific targeted goal of systematically increasing their capacity to recruit, train, support, and utilize volunteers in order to more effectively serve their clients. Evaluation of AmeriCorps VIP found that AmeriCorps VIP had a strong and much larger positive impact on organizational capacity concerning volunteers than non-AmeriCorps VIP programs did, and AmeriCorps VIP had a particularly strong positive impact on the clarity of volunteer roles, volunteer recruitment and management, and including volunteers in decision-making. And these differences between AmeriCorps VIP and similar programs were found to be statistically significant. Next slide, please. And the last example that I'll give on VISTA, let's wait for the slides to transition, Betsy. Thank you. So we're going to hear from Eileen Conavoy in just a minute, who's the acting director of VISTA, and we're really excited to have her with us here today. But I wanted to share a little bit about some of the research that's been done around the National VISTA program as well. They had initial findings from 12 in-depth case analyses showing that VISTA members build the capacity of organizations to serve communities even within that first year of service. For example, VISTA members develop systems for increasing organizational efficiency, engaged in outreach and partnership development to expand the organization's reach, and they generate resources such as funding, volunteers, and in-kind donations. So this is just a quick overview of service years and why we hope you'll consider using service years to add capacity to your organization. And on the next slide, I'll just wrap up my piece here, and I'll come back towards the end and share some more resources. What we wanted to do is plant the seed. Hopefully you're curious now about starting a service year model to add capacity building roles within your organization. For the rest of the webinar, you can take action. Listen for these examples and hear how service is being used by various organizations. Start thinking about what service year model might be right for your organization or your community. There's going to be plenty of time for Q&A, so please engage with our panel today and with the resources at the end, and we're always available at Service Year Alliance to be able to help organizations as you're looking to build out. So thank you, Betsy, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Brooke, for the overview of Service Year Alliance and for sharing ways that national service has been used as a strategy to help build capacity with other organizations. And also just love the video with Corey Benjamin. What a wonderful story. So now we're going to move to our next presenter, who is Jeff Brady, Manager of Volunteer Engagement at United Way Worldwide. And he'll be talking about how national service has helped United Ways around the globe build their capacity, develop talent, and amplify their impact. Jeff, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Betsy, and thanks to everybody for the opportunity to be here. I'm especially grateful to be with you on this topic, having recently celebrated my 19th anniversary as a National Service alum. I served in 6 states. I was transformed through my service year, and I'm honored now to represent United Way. Next slide, please. United Way is a global nonprofit. We are active in nearly 1,800 communities across more than 40 countries and territories. What you see here is a look at where we are worldwide, but it's worth noting that there are more than 1,100 community-based United Ways throughout the United States. Chances are, if you're attending the webinar and you're from the U.S., there's a United Way near you. If there is, I do hope it's a good relationship with your organization. Our mission is to improve lives in communities by engaging everyone we can in the fight for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in every community we serve. We're a platform for people to create social change through service, philanthropy, and collaboration. Many know us as a fundraising organization, and we are, but we are much more than that. Volunteer and employee engagement is essential to United Way's success. We know solutions require more than money or programs or policies. Our partnership with National Service empowers us to be better at everything we do. I'm excited to share both how and why and continue Brooke's momentum, as United Way is a great case study for a a successful partnership. Betsy, next slide, please. One of the reasons why a national service is such a perfect match for us is that we share so many goals. The alignment is truly essential for our partnership to thrive. National service, and you'll see here again the Corporation for National and Community Service, these are their 6 focus areas, and they are broad categories. So I encourage everybody to take a moment to think about how your own organization's goals might pair with one or more of those focus areas. I'm confident everybody can make a connection, and if not, I encourage you eventually to learn more about each topic online to see where you do fit. It's a really wide gate of entry for any organization in the U.S., large or small, urban or rural, and each of them helps to make America safer, smarter, and healthier. At United Way, there's a strong connection to our 4 global priorities. Betsy, if you'll kindly click the screen, you'll be able to display United Way's Global Results Framework. This is our effort to track and report accomplishments globally. And you'll see here on the right of your screen a lot of synergy between our work in education, economic mobility, and health. Further to that Global Results Framework, many United Ways are involved in nearly every stage of a disaster and address many of the needs of veterans and military families through programs like Mission United. Next slide. Just as shared goals are essential to United Way's partnership with national service, so is the need to engage volunteers in direct and indirect service. United Way Worldwide is the headquarters office, and as that function, we strive to help United Ways across our network work better together. To do that effectively, we need partners that can help us strengthen core organizational capabilities in ways that really aren't possible through internship programs or hired temporary staff. National Service provides us with full-time, committed, passionate volunteers that deliver sustainable solutions. They expand our reach. They help us build and scale our best programs. Indirect service volunteers from National Service promote best practice. And by doing all of that work, they are able to inspire and motivate not just the United Ways where they serve, but hundreds of our partners and encouraging them to innovate, much like Brooke had shared with you about Habitat and CalServe's examples. I like to think of our national service volunteers like the architects, the designers, and the general contractors that help build a home. They're the ones that are responsible to plan and design the home and engage the carpenters, the plumbers, the electricians, and others that actually make the home livable. It's probably most helpful to offer you all specifics of that way. Betsy, if you'll give a click, this will display a list of common service activities performed by typical capacity building volunteers. And again, you saw some of these listed, and Brooke mentioned the activities in one of her slides. United Way's national service volunteers help in all of these different ways. They help us design community assessment plans, build and formalize public partnerships, recruit volunteers, create or enhance knowledge resources and training, evaluate programs to ensure they're relevant to the community and working well, recommend changes and improvements in programming, drafting fundraising plans, approaching donors, and much more. Next slide. What you see here are some accomplishments from United Way's AmeriCorps VISTA project focused on education. You will hear more about VISTA from its brilliant and kind leader, Eileen Conaboy. But for here, I'm just proud and honored to share with you United Way's experience in our partnership. Many United Ways have hosted VISTA programs and other national service programs that build capacity for decades, but it was only recently, since 2013, that United Way Worldwide took a leading role in the program. And we did so by acting as what they call an intermediary sponsor. What that meant for us is that each year we applied for an allocation of VISTA volunteers to advance shared goals in our education portfolio. We then collaborated with United Ways in the United States across our network to recruit and assign those volunteers. We didn't get everything right in the first years of our project, but indeed as it evolved and thanks to our national service volunteers, we were able to quickly improve how we recruited community volunteers, manage the grant, monitor and report accomplishments, and more. Today, articulating the diverse benefits is easier, as you can see some of the accomplishments on the screen before you, but it still can be challenging. For me, it's like tracking the light that hits a really big diamond, and I'm not wearing one, but just visualize that for a moment. The light or the good this program does really does go everywhere once it strikes the program. And the communities where we serve in this education project, and again, you see 37 United Ways at the top of your screen, and you can think of that as almost as many states. It was truly a coast-to-coast national program. Beyond those numbers, parents were more engaged, students improved their attendance, their behavior, their emotional development. Our volunteers went on to do more great things as college students, graduate students, young professionals, and as moms and dads, as individuals. The project also greatly enhanced our own organizational ability to manage and benefit from a dependable federal program. VISTA was first launched in 1965. The partnership with National Service was really a win for our communities, the volunteers that served, United Way, and the country. Win, 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 win. Betsy, next slide. Building on our success in education, last year, United Way and AmeriCorps VISTA reimagined our partnership to focus on improving economic mobility. Since our first member arrived in Huntington, West Virginia on May 26th of last year, we tracked these accomplishments. As with our education project, there are many benefits that aren't represented here. Our partnership got stronger, and it really added value to nearly everybody that touched it. We have a solid foundation for grant administration, member management for the VISTA volunteers, supervisor relationships who are staff at United Ways. All of that enables us to invest more resources into scaling effective programs, more resources into outreach, and additional resource development. Next slide. So here are just a few, and I recognize there are many takeaways, but in conclusion, whatever your organization's mission is, I'd invite you to consider National Service to be a partner who can help you do many things. These are just a handful of examples and reminders of what it's helped United Way to do. With regard to capacity, we're an organization that thrives on efficiency gains and reducing the workload of our partners. We've done that through VISTA. Relationships, more than 100 of our volunteers spent an entire year living and serving in the communities, building relationships at all kinds of levels. With respect to impact, I shared many of the outputs and outcomes from our projects, but I just invite you to think about, and this is kind of an obvious visual, but think about how much smaller those numbers would be or what the expense would be needed to reach them without our National Service volunteers. With respect to business success, you saw the cash and non-cash resources that our project gained. I didn't mention that something that you probably did think about, and that's the infrastructure for all of that work. Volunteers are leaving United Way behind with dozens of templates, proposals, and lists of potential sponsors. And finally, this last bullet point on talent. United Way Worldwide is a charter member of CNCS's Employers for National Service program. This is a national effort that connects AmeriCorps and Peace Corps volunteer alumni with employers from the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. More than 500 businesses and nonprofits are part of this initiative. This was something that our partnership encouraged United Way to look more seriously into, but beyond participation in that program, United Ways have an opportunity to keep outstanding volunteers engaged in their community, either through a second year of service or hire them as full-time staff, which has happened in multiple instances across our network. I myself sit just a few hundred feet away from two of my former direct reports who both served as AmeriCorps VISTAs. I truly feel that I could go on listing benefits for a while, but I'm sure my time is up, and I do want to defer to our other presenters. So I look forward to questions later and to be available to anybody, as Betsy had mentioned offline, who wants to learn more about our experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate your presentation, and I'm so impressed by how much United Way Worldwide has used National Service and how it's benefited from that relationship. And also appreciate your comments about building the talent pipeline. That was the subject of webinar number 2. So if that's a topic of interest, please check out webinar number 2. We have a couple of minutes for questions, so I'm going to start with one that I think probably, Brooke, you're best positioned to answer this question. Can any nonprofit apply to participate in a service program, or are there limitations or restrictions or activities that they need to do before they can apply?
Thanks, Betsy. It's a good question. I think the eligibility is pretty broad. So I listed off programs thinking about nonprofits, so you're thinking about 501c3s when you're thinking about that for applications, but also school districts, local education agencies, and on, thinking about local government entities as well. So it's pretty broad of who can apply for that, and there's not restrictions in being able to reach out and start looking at the application process.
That's great. Because this might follow along that question, that some nonprofits are already very small, and maybe, Jeff, you can deal with this with smaller United Ways. If they're already kind of small and they have limited capacity, is it difficult to apply for service? Is there a lot to do, or is it what's the process like for nonprofits to do that? And so, Brooke, why don't you start, and then Jeff, I'll turn to you from the perspective of United Ways.
Sure. So you could approach this from multiple ways. One is to thinking about, are there existing organizations you can tap into? And I've got a list of ways to think about it at the end, but I'll highlight. But we refer to them as intermediaries, of serving as a host site for an intermediary that's already an existing program. And it may be that you're starting out, with one VISTA member. It may be that you're looking for other funding to be able to support one or two or a handful of service year members, but that you don't need to start big. You don't need to start with a big pool of members to begin with. One of the organizations that we're not highlighting here today, but have mentioned, and Corey Benjamin showed what his experience was like with Public Allies, that works with local nonprofits to do placements. We're also seeing some city governments do this, or the county level do this, that they're helping to be that intermediary placement for organizations that maybe don't feel like they have enough capacity to take that on.
Okay, that's really helpful. Jeff, what's your experience with some of the United Ways in terms of how they get involved with service?
Well, thank you, Betsy. And so, as I mentioned, many United Ways have been hosting VISTA programs for a number of decades, and something that is part of their recipe for success in a community. I think for any organization, there could be a learning curve that's involved. I would liken it to, gardening. It can be like planting a seed and kind of learning all about what's required to help make that seed grow. One of the advantages in overcoming that learning curve is a long-term relationship. Getting to know that means that you're building a long-term relationship with long-term benefits. So again, kind of go forward with that seed until it's harvest time, and you're reaping much greater gains from your work. So I think that CNCS as a federal agency makes it straightforward and easy as possible to overcome that learning curve and be knowledgeable and successful. I think an even better way for smaller organizations to look towards is this intermediary model. It's more like a potted plant that you then put in the ground. So an intermediary sponsor like a United Way or like another organization that is taking on the relationship with CNCS, they're cutting out a lot of the additional work and effort involved into making that program successful. So for smaller United Ways, and even in fact for some large United Ways, there's great benefit in having United Way Worldwide as an intermediary sponsor take on some of the heavy lifting.
Great, thank you. And I love your imagery of potted plants and garden seeds and diamonds. We do have one other quick question. I'm going to shoot this one to Brooke, because I think probably you can answer this pretty quickly. But does the CNCS funding cover the entire salary of a service year employee?
I would say generally not the entire salary. So you're going to hear from Eileen in a second talking about the different VISTA programs, and some traditional VISTA can cover that living stipend and other benefits. But if you're looking at the AmeriCorps state and national grant, usually it's about a 50-50 cost share. That varies kind of by the number of years that you've had your program in existence.
Okay. Okay, thanks. That's helpful for people to know. Okay, thanks, Brooke and Jeff. I think we need to keep moving. So we're going to move to our next presenter, who's Gretchen Vanderveer, Executive Director, Fair Chance, and she'll tell us about how one Fair Chance nonprofit partner has benefited from national service in the VISTA program. Gretchen, you are up.
Great. Thank you, Betsy, and hi, everyone. I'm so pleased to be with you today. And I am the executive director of an organization called Fair Chance. And I'm going to do a couple of things. One is I'm going to talk a little bit about being an intermediary, a VISTA intermediary, and why we decided to create what's called our VISTA Fellows program. And then I am going to drill down on the example of one nonprofit who we have had a long-term relationship with and how they applied to us and what they were hoping to do by applying for a VISTA and how that actually worked out for them and what the benefits were. So if you could turn to the next slide, please. Okay, a little bit about Fair Chance so you understand the context. Oh, next slide, please. On this slide is our mission. And while people often refer to us as a capacity building organization, our outcome is really about putting more children and youth on a pathway out of poverty. But we do that by identifying promising nonprofits working in neighborhoods of high concentrated poverty and then providing them with a free 6 to 18 month partnership program of intense capacity building or management assistance that's comprehensive. So while our outcome is for every child to succeed, our method is to work with and through community-based nonprofits. Our goal is to see organizations grow, serve more children and youth, and achieve measurable outcomes. Next slide, please. Next, thank you. Since 2002, we have worked with over 120 community-based nonprofits across Washington, D.C. and Prince George's County, Maryland, with impressive results. We conduct pre- and post-assessments with nonprofits on 8 areas of organizational competency, such as board development, human resources, financial management, fundraising, strategic planning, communications and partnership, and program evaluation. And then we assign them a full-time capacity building specialist that works with them about 8 hours a week. And then we track their growth and ongoing sustainability as well as their improvement on the competencies. And we know that from our surveys, within a few years of a Fair Chance partnership, the organizations we work with double their revenue and triple the number of children and youth they enroll in their programs. So how do we do this? On the next slide, I will share some of the elements of our model that we believe account for our impact. So we use a rigorous selection process, and we're looking to identify an annual cohort of these youth-serving nonprofits, and we provide at no cost to them this partnership program. And we have 3 different programs depending on the size and the individual challenges of the organization, and we slot them into one program or the other depending on the application. We'll do a pre- and post-assessment of the strengths and challenges of the organization. During the partnership, there's a customized work plan that we use between the capacity building specialist and the executive director to monitor and move forward, move the needle on our capacity building goals. There's weekly coaching or work sessions. And during this time, the nonprofit will be introduced to various best practices, tools, systems, policies, and they will receive support in developing things like a theory of change, fundraising plan, templates for writing grants, all those kinds of things could be a part of the partnership. Next slide, please. But after the partnership, what's next? So this slide is a picture taken at our Fair Chance Honors Program or graduation ceremony. And the tradition that we have at that ceremony is for a leader of one of our alumni nonprofits who's graduated in the past to come and speak and welcome the existing current graduates into our alumni network. And in the early years of Fair Chance, there was nothing specific that we did for alumni after graduation except convene them every once in a while. We had provided our free partnership program, and that was it. Our resources only went so far. But because we are committed to the sustainability of our network, and we like to believe that once a partner, always a partner, we wanted to explore ways that we could provide ongoing support. And we were hearing that our alumni were growing and they were facing new challenges. And many were adding programs or adding participants, and they needed new systems, processes, and procedures, but they didn't necessarily have the resources in terms of bodies, human capital, to help them with their growth. So one of the solutions that we came up with, thanks to our relationship with the Corporation for National and Community Service, was to create this VISTA Fellows program. And because we are an intermediary, we did apply to be a VISTA placement site similar to the United Way worldwide, except on a much smaller scale, I might say. But we did receive a number of VISTA slots with, that we were able to allocate with CNCS approval. And by being a VISTA placement site, we also received a VISTA ourselves to help build Fair Chances capacity. So how did the program work? Next slide, please. Every year, Fair Chance sends to our alumni network an opportunity to apply for a VISTA member. This is an online application, and we review and select them just like we review and select the applications from the applications for our partners every year. What we're looking for is what nonprofits make the best case for making use of a VISTA to build their capacity. And we will work with the nonprofit to, once selected, to develop the VISTA assignment description, or the VAD, and when that's approved, Fair Chance works with the nonprofit sites to recruit the VISTAs, who the nonprofits then hire and supervise. And the role of the Fair Chance VISTA for the organizations we work with is similar to what both Brooke and Jeff talked about. But now I'm going to give you two quick examples of what two VISTAs did who worked with one of our nonprofits. Next slide, please. So this example is from an organization called One World Education. One World works with teachers to improve research, writing, and presentation skills for over 5,000 public and charter school students annually across Washington, D.C., primarily coming from low-income backgrounds, with over 75% receiving free and reduced price lunch. VISTA is a poverty alleviation program, so one of the things that you will need to make sure that you're able to do if you're applying for VISTA is to show that what your program does is addresses the issues of poverty. One World is committed to ensuring that all students are prepared to succeed in college, career, and life through an innovative curriculum where students acquire critical 21st century skills while exploring social justice issues with personal meaning and relevance. And One World originally applied to be a Fair Chance partner in 2011, graduating in 2012. Since that time, their program has grown from operating in 3 DC public schools to 30 public and charter middle and high schools across the city. And while One World receives some fees from schools through their partnerships, 75% of their annual revenue comes from philanthropy. So while their program had grown, they did not have the resources to grow their staff proportionally. And when One World heard about the Fair Chance Fellows program, they thought maybe this is the way we could get some additional capacity to build our development program so we can increase the philanthropic support for what we're not getting from the support from the schools, for the growth that we're having in the schools. When One World was selected, we were able to negotiate for 2 VISTAs for them based on the strength of their application and the position descriptions that they had developed. So next slide. The first position was a development and communications VISTA. And this position was first approved, and the person went through a pre-service orientation program, which all VISTAs need to do, in August of 2017 and started in September of 2017. And the program is a year-long program, and so it just ended this past August. This picture on this slide is actually taken from an event I attended, which was conceived and coordinated by their VISTA member with the help of course, the other staff at One World. The growth that One World saw in terms of their funding was really going to be in individual giving. And so the VISTA's role was specifically to set up a donor cultivation program, of which this event on this slide is now an annual part of and a critical piece of their strategy of recruiting new donors. The second part of the role was to develop an annual calendar and list of activities that made up their donor cultivation program. The third function of this particular VISTA position was to create and implement an external communication strategy to include developing a social media campaign. So for example, the VISTA set up their Instagram account, created a strategy for regular postings to all of their social media accounts, and developed the template for a monthly newsletter. The VISTA was also responsible for taking all of these contacts that the various staff members had made over the past couple years and updating their constant contact database with them. The VISTA also created a procedural handbook for prospect research and documenting the regular communications that they would make with funders throughout the year. So that's the development of communications VISTA. Their second VISTA, if we can turn to the next slide, was a program and evaluations VISTA. And I've got the four specific main parts of their position description here. So you can see that they were looking to update and systematize the process for communicating, collecting data from the school partners that One World has. They set up a system of regular communication with teachers about their evaluation process and the need to get data in and the deadlines. They set up and maintained a portal for the student research projects that they were collecting across their schools. And they also developed the manual that then documents this process and their protocols so that year after year, it's a replicable process. So basically, the assessments, the way their evaluation system works is students complete pre and post assessments. These assessments are designed to measure growth and skills aligned to Common Core state standards related to argumentative writing. The assessments were scored, and then evaluation reports are created for each grade in school, so teachers and administrators can see trends in student progress. And last year, One World Education reported 70% of students improved their average score after completing the program. So One World would not have been able to report that kind of data, and now they're going to be tracking them year after year after year. And as a small nonprofit, that's really important to have that data and that consistent data measurable over time to be able to share your outcomes with funders. The overall result of One World's VISTA experience, the events that I talked about, the practices, and the evaluation system, all of those things now live on after the VISTA's one-year assignment. What the VISTA created or established are now institutionalized by the ongoing One World staff who would never have had the time to do the upfront work to create or set them up themselves. And as a result of the VISTA's contributions, revenue has substantially increased over the course of 2017 and 2018. So that is the summary of what One World Education, a local nonprofit here in Washington, D.C., experienced as a result of participating in the VISTA AmeriCorps program. And I'm happy to answer any questions about their experience or Fair Chance's experience ourselves in having a VISTA at the end of this program.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gretchen. It's really interesting to learn about Fair Chance's role, but then also to understand as an intermediary how you helped One World Education and the VISTAs made such an impact on their program. It's very exciting. So we are going to move to our final presenter today, who is Eileen Conaboy, Acting Director, AmeriCorps VISTA program at the Corporation for National and Community Service. And she'll be talking about the power of the VISTA program, which has been in existence since 1965. Eileen, you're up.
Great. Thank you so much, Betsy, and hello to everybody tuning in today. It is so nice to hear from Jeff and Gretchen about the ways AmeriCorps VISTA members are making a difference at United Way and Fair Chance. It's really terrific to hear those real-world examples of what's happening when you infuse VISTA power into the mix. So thank you for sharing that. As Betsy said, I am Eileen Conboy, Acting Director of AmeriCorps VISTA, and super excited to have this opportunity. So a huge thank you to you, Betsy, and your team, and to Service Year Alliance, which does such a great job in making service years a common expectation. So grateful to be a part of this session today. If we look at the next slide, and I'm going to say this without being able to see my screen. My screen just went dark, so please nudge me verbally if I'm off of the presentation. Wouldn't you know? But if you look at the next slide, you'll see that the mission and the purpose of VISTA is to strengthen organizations that eliminate and alleviate poverty through the mobilization of community volunteers and resources. So that is the mode in which this great program delivers its resources. This is a program that's been around for 53 years, as Jeff said, a long and proud history in the anti-poverty space. Was founded under President Johnson as part of the War on Poverty, and then became part of the AmeriCorps network of national service programs in 1993. So I hope that many of you are familiar or become familiar with not just the VISTA program, but also AmeriCorps NCCC, AmeriCorps State and National, which Brooke mentioned, and also Senior Corps. We are all housed under one federal agency, that mouthful of an agency, the Corporation for National and Community Service, CNCS. So there are so many different ways to strengthen your community and make a difference through these various streams. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide. My fellow presenters did a terrific job demonstrating just how VISTA's core principles are embodied in the projects. And it's really the combination of these principles that strengthen and increase the anti-poverty organization's reach and help drive sustainable solutions forward. It's really important to note, too, that VISTA was not developed to deliver short-term services to help make poverty more tolerable. That's not the point. It's really to work with and through organizations to help move people out of poverty. So I think that was loud and clear in my fellow presenters' presentations as well. If we take a look at the next slide, hopefully that is reading the basics, and the details related to VISTA members should be included in this slide here. It is clear that most VISTA members are serving 1 year full-time service terms with a nonprofit. We do also have a summer associate option, which allows people to serve for 8 to 10 weeks, but the overwhelming majority of the VISTA service terms are 1 year full-time. Our members are also all ages, so we have an 18-year-old minimum age limit, but we have 18-year-olds serving in Alaska, 85-year-olds serving in Alabama. It really runs the gamut. So with that said, most VISTA members do join in their 20s and are serving all around the country with sponsoring organizations that include nonprofits, local government agencies, tribes, etc. If we look at the next slide, you should see an annual snapshot from 2018. This is the annual impact of AmeriCorps VISTA, just really top line figures. And you should be able to see there that each year AmeriCorps VISTA engages over 8,500 members in more than 4,500 different sites around the country. That's quite a footprint for a $92 million federal program, and we're able to do that because of partners like the United Way and Fair Chance and about 800 other nonprofits with whom we partner around the country. So looking at these figures, you can really see the multiplier magic that's part of the VISTA program. It's important that something be left behind after a VISTA member leaves, and to see that VISTA members have helped to leverage more than $206 million in cash and in-kind resources and recruit and mobilize more than 800,000 local volunteers in the community. That's really getting to the capacity building nature and that sustainability piece that we're talking about today. So if you look at the next slide, we have hundreds of listings around the nation at any given time and a searchable database on our website at the nationalservice.gov/VISTA or AmeriCorps.gov/VISTA, both work. But we really encourage you as a potential sponsor and as a person who might have a neighbor, a friend, a student, a parent, yourself, to be thinking about these opportunities. You can really kind of get into the details of the many sponsors and organizations that are out there to give you a sense of the types of projects, but also the real vacancies for these service years that are out there today. I love this slide, Go Where You're Needed. I think that this is just a really perfectly pitched AmeriCorps VISTA tagline. It gets at the need, and with more than 40 million people living in poverty in the United States, we know that there's most definitely a need, but it also really hints at a journey. We have approximately 1/3 of our VISTA members relocating to serve. So, with that fraction, you can see most VISTAs are working in their communities or their hometowns, but that's pretty significant that 1/3 of VISTA members are moving to other places to serve. When I was 22, I left the DC area here in Washington, DC, and went out to serve a year as a VISTA in North Dakota. I had benefited from so many poverty programs and interventions myself in my younger years, from Head Start to Pell Grants and other interventions, and it was really my way of giving back. But it was also definitely my own service awakening. It was a huge leap outside of my comfort zone that didn't just build my skills and confidence and fulfill that need to help others in service, but it also really expanded my cross-cultural understanding, moving from an urban area to rural, and just there were so many other pieces that don't usually make the marketing materials. It's kind of those other layers, but it really was life-changing and transformative, as my fellow presenters have also alluded to from their own experience. We find that a lot of people do want to make a difference, and some want to leave home and take a leap into the unfamiliar. So I think that part of the program, that relocation piece, is also the piece that really makes the VISTA program's nickname, the Domestic Peace Corps, so fitting. So if you look at the next slide, you should see a slide on becoming a sponsor, and that's really how to take the first step and become a host to VISTA members at your organization. We are just rolling out a new standardized quarterly review process for VISTA concept papers. So this is exciting because it's making it easier for nonprofits to access VISTA resources. It's an exciting development that you can get in on the ground floor by reviewing the details on our website. And also in tomorrow's calendar, we have a webinar for potential sponsors. That is December 12th at 2 p.m. that I believe will be shared via the chat, and you'll get that link. But we do think that, we hope that you'll be interested enough from today's news to really find out all of the details, all of the particulars. It all starts with a concept paper, and that is reviewed by our staff, that then, if it's a good fit, we'll invite organizations to submit an application. And so getting a better understanding of the types of work, the types of projects, the priorities of the program, some of the cost share details that were talked about in one of the questions that was submitted. VISTA does pay the living allowance for VISTA members. The average living allowance is about $13,500. It is set county by county based on the poverty guidelines that are issued each year. But while we don't have a statutorily mandated match requirement, cost sharing does allow us to go much further with our federal appropriation. And so some sponsors do pay the living allowance for some of their VISTA members. So if an organization, for example, were to receive 5 VISTA members, they may well be paying the living allowance for one of those members. So again, lots of different ways to do that, but that is something that you can learn more about too on our website, as well as in that webinar that I mentioned that will be taking place tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully you'll now see the final slide, apply to be a sponsor or a member. There are so many different ways to get involved, and we just hope that you'll take the time to check us out. And I very much appreciate being asked to be a part of today's webinar. And I'm so grateful to you, Betsy, and the American Youth Policy Forum, as well as to our friends at ServiceShare, Jeff, Gretchen, Brooke, and all of you who are out there in cyberspace. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Eileen. You kind of make me want to join VISTA right now and really get involved in some of these wonderful programs. And as somebody who's a little bit older, I have watched VISTA over the years and just am so pleased to know that it's still so strong and there's still so many people that are interested in contributing to their communities. So we do have a few minutes for questions before Brooke comes back to talk about some resources. Let me check the little box here. I have a question that I think I'll share with, well, maybe I'll start with Eileen, you, and then maybe move to Gretchen. So Eileen, maybe you've run into this. What are some common misconceptions or doubts that people who are in nonprofits might have about starting a service program, and how would you respond to those doubts? So Brooke, you
Sure.
start, and then we'll go back to Gretchen.
Great. I think that was for me. This is Eileen. So I will say one of the misconceptions.
I'm sorry, Eileen.
No worries. One of the misconceptions that we come across pretty regularly is the age misconception. So I do think that AmeriCorps is often equated with the younger folks. And as I said, I think our average age right now for AmeriCorps VISTA is 26 for VISTA members. We do have people serving mid-career, post-retirement. And so that is something that we always want to dispel and try to dispel, you know, in every venue we receive. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm so glad to hear of your own possible interest, because we have just, you know, amazing projects that are out there, and people, you know, coming to the table with experience, you know, significant work experience is part of the, you know, beauty of the VISTA program, is that it's very diverse in terms of, you know, young people being directly out of school, baby boomers, et cetera. So that is definitely a misconception that's all too common that we're trying to correct there. I think the other one that I would say is that sometimes nonprofits think that, you know, they have to be a large behemoth nonprofit out there to kind of come up to the AmeriCorps window, if you will. And again, with AmeriCorps VISTA, we do have ways to work with small nonprofits. We do have nonprofits out there that only have one VISTA member, and we have nonprofits out there with 50. So I think the intermediary model that was referenced earlier, that is a really effective way to work with resources when the nonprofit itself is at such low capacity or such a small size that even the idea of taking advantage of this resource could be daunting. I know that my own VISTA service was in a, you know, nonprofit with 2 staff members and 1 VISTA myself. So, you know, I have a special, you know, special place in my heart for those folks that are out there doing amazing things and might be daunted by the idea of a federal program. But I hope that that too is dispelled. There are lots of ways to work with us.
Great. Thanks, Eileen. Gretchen, do you have some thoughts about what possible misconceptions might exist?
Sure. You know, I think that one of the things that small nonprofits fear is if I'm engaged in a federal program like VISTA, will there be a lot of administrative requirements? And I would say, yes, there is some. There, you know, you have a requirement to track hours, you have a requirement to do reporting. But if you are involved in an intermediary site program like the Fair Chance or the United Way, some of that burden will be taken from you by the intermediary. But it's really doable and manageable if you work very, very closely with your state office through the Corporation for National Community Service. They'll help you meet the requirements. But you do have to account for that because there is time in doing the tracking and reporting. And I would also say that making sure you have somebody that can supervise the VISTA and provide the support that's required is critical. whether it is, somebody returning to the workforce after not being in the workforce, or if it's somebody right out of college, there's always going to be transition issues. And so making sure that you're just not leaving that person on their own, that they get regular supervision is important. The pre-service orientation and the trainings provided through VISTA, make sure that they attend and participate. And one of the things that we do as an intermediary is we bring the VISTAs together, and that can be helpful, particularly if a VISTA member has relocated from another community. They may not know anyone. We also work with our VISTAs on applying for food assistance. It is tough to live on the stipend. It's wonderful to have, and of course the education award is a huge benefit. But sometimes our VISTAs have really struggled in making ends meet on the VISTA stipend. So just being aware and thinking about how you can support them would be a good thing to do.
That's a great response, something to keep in mind. I have a question then. I think this is best answered by Gretchen and then Jeff. So how do you help nonprofits identify which service program might best align with their organizations and mission and goals? So Gretchen, I don't know if you just work exclusively with VISTA or connect some of your nonprofits to other service programs too.
Sure, we certainly have connected other partners, some of our partners to other service programs. We have a program that made use of AmeriCorps state, and well, actually national, I think it was. They were a reading assistance program, and they became a part of a national AmeriCorps effort. They saw that their program aligned with a grant opportunity through AmeriCorps, and were able to apply and receive that grant from AmeriCorps. And with AmeriCorps, they have really been able to scale. We've also encouraged some of our programs to touch base with senior volunteers. So there's a variety of, we also have a number of our programs, and this isn't part of the Corporation for National and Community Service, but we connected a number of our partners to something called the Nation Volunteer Corps here in Washington, D.C., which is retired individuals who, through the Nation Volunteer Corps program, can come into your organization 2 to 3 days a week and provide volunteer service. It's sort of similar to some of the Senior Corps programs through the Corporation for National and Community Service. So absolutely, we are always looking to support the small nonprofits we work with to find additional ways to bring capacity into their organizations without having to hire a full-time employee, and making use of national service programs we think is one of the absolute best ways to build your capacity to develop a new program, build a new fundraising activity. It really can accelerate your impact, but you have to really think about how you're going to use that service member and make sure you provide the right supports for the service member.
Thank you, Gretchen. Jeff, what's your experience in how you help the United Way's find the best service program that aligns with their mission and goals?
We encourage everybody to start with why they want to engage volunteers and for what purpose. So knowing what your goal is and being very clear that it is an organizational priority is a very good starting place. And I think from there, trying to understand who in the community or what kind of individual and what their skill set and time commitment will need to be. I think that's a great starting place to be confident about what it is that you think you need. Then I would celebrate Service Year Alliance and the corporation for being very clear in the kinds of programming they offer. VISTA is fully embracing capacity building, whereas some of the other AmeriCorps programs are also very clear that they are not a capacity building, but they are as I had mentioned with home construction, they're the carpenters and the electricians and the readers and tutors and mentors in United Way's case that are doing direct service. So I think knowing those two and then looking what's out there from organizations like Service Year Alliance and others, A Fair Chance, and these kinds of examples. What is it that you're trying to achieve? What kind of talent do you need? And then keep moving.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I think we need to move on with the program. I want to thank the audience for all your questions. Brooke wants to come back and share several resources that the Service Year Alliance has developed that can help individuals and organizations commit and get involved with a year of service. So Brooke, please come back and tell us about these resources.
Awesome. Happy to close things out with sharing a lot of resources that are out there and available. On Jeff's point just now, I just want to kind of reiterate the points that he was making about kind of starting with your program model and thinking about what you want to achieve by doing this first. And so when we work with organizations, that's where we start with what is the need, what are you trying to fill by adding a service year program, and really thinking about this as not just, hey, I need capacity, I need to get a body here to come help me or a body here to come help me, but really thinking about it as improving, adding capacity to your organization, really changing a service member's life, wherever they are on the age and experience spectrum, and really having a wider impact to the community. Then we kind of get to the point of which program is the right fit, thinking about what you're looking to do. It may be that you're looking for one or a handful of core members. It looks maybe that you're trying to build something out that's larger. We can kind of assess whether you're looking at something that it may be better to start with an intermediary partner and see if there's a good fit to do that. I will say one of the big programs that does capacity building, we talked about Public Allies, is actually not a VISTA program. It's an AmeriCorps state and national program. So when you think about VISTA and capacity building, when you think about AmeriCorps state and national grants, those are for direct service, like the home builders, as Jeff said, plus for capacity building roles. They can do both of those. And so it doesn't rule out AmeriCorps state and national if you're thinking about capacity building. And then thinking about those other ways to fund this as well. So thinking about, are there state funds that you could use that would relate to this, maybe around workforce development, or around specific issue areas that you're trying to focus on? Are there philanthropic partners that you could work with to support this? And you could, build out a program looking at VISTA, AmeriCorps State National, or maybe you start something on your own, which we're seeing more and more programs start to do. So let me get into the resources now. I want to talk about a few different avenues. So on the next slide, you'll see what we say kind of the 4 big ways to engage. So thinking about, can you replicate something that already exists out there? So we love the idea of looking at evidence-based models and thinking, is there something already working somewhere else that I could add, that I could run a service year program and just build off of that model rather than building my own thing. And we're trying to do that a lot here, where we're trying to create toolkits and resources so that you can take something around fundraising or volunteer management and be able to kind of have an off-the-shelf thing to look at and be able to replicate. You could serve as an expansion site for a national program. So think even this of city years and other programs, reading core programs that are existing already. Could you bring that model to your organization? You could become a host site. So thinking about this more as an intermediary for an existing local, state, national program where they could come in and add capacity to your organization. And then finally, everybody can do this, informing others. We all have young people in our lives, and people might be interested in doing a service year. At Service Year Alliance, we're really focused on that next generation of service leadership. But as Aileen said, it's all different ages of people that are doing national service and doing service years. But we really need your help to just continue to talk about this opportunity, because we find that not enough young people especially know about a service year opportunity. So lots of great examples, I think, today that help you picture how you could bring these models to your organization. I want to direct you to our resource hub that can give you some tools to get started. So when I was at the federal level at HUD working with Promise Zones across the country, we had VISTAs, and one of the things that was very hard was not having kind of off-the-shelf resources of how do I build this out, what should I be doing to be able to help all these communities adding service year programs. And so really exciting thing that Service Year Alliance is started to build out tons of these resources on resources.serviceyear.org. So that's our resource hub. And so you'll see on there that we have how-to guides. We have a resource I'm going to show you in just a minute as well as, and there's a searchable database, so you can go and find resources for core member support, alumni support, as well as how to start and grow your program. So on the next slide, I want to highlight one particular resource. If you go on our website there, you'll find the Creating a Service Year Program guide, and this is really running through that process that Jeff was just talking through of thinking about what kind of service year might be right for your organization and what your needs are, to thinking about how you can implement and execute on that. So really, that's a great resource. Go download it. It's free and available there to be able to get started. I'm going to step back for a second on the next slide and just talk about us as an organization and ways that we can hopefully be of service and help you as you're trying to pursue this strategy. So Service Year Alliance, as Betsy said in the beginning, we're a nonprofit organization that's relentlessly pursuing a bold vision, making a service year a common expectation and opportunity for all young Americans as a way to tackle important challenges while transforming their own lives. So we work to create the conditions for large-scale, long-term growth of high-quality service year programs. We're focusing on increasing the supply of these opportunities. We know that there's young people that are turned away but not finding the right fit, and so we provide access to that information to grow and improve programs, and improve program quality. And then we work on policy and advocacy to be able to foster the expansion of service as well. And then we work to increase the demand by young people as well, that not all young people know about this as an opportunity yet. We want them to, so we try and inspire that next generation to serve by raising awareness and generating resources to support those core members during and after their year of service. And if you haven't been to yet, serviceyear.org, we run a state-of-the-art platform for young people to be able to find a service year opportunity. So this is really a marketplace of service years where young people can go and find those opportunities. I think for you all, it's also helpful to look at, to just get a sense of the types of service years that are out there, especially around capacity building, that you'll be amazed by the tons of different opportunities that are available. And on the last slide, so if you're interested in starting a service year program and you have questions, I put up our email address here, so growth@serviceyear.org. That comes to me and our team here, where we can be able to provide support. And we're interested in helping organizations and agencies start and scale programs. Our goal is that we want to see service really go to scale and be an opportunity for every young American. And so you can help us do that by thinking about how this fits within your organization.
Okay, Brooke, thank you for running through all of those resources so quickly. They're really great if you haven't had a chance to look at them. Unfortunately, I think we're out of time, so just really quickly, I want to remind everybody about the other two webinars. So check out the recordings that are on AYPF's website and Service Year Alliance's website. And I want to give a huge thank you to all of our fantastic presenters for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us today. Please feel free to contact any of them following our program. And lastly, thank you to the audience for participating and hanging in there with us today. We really appreciate your taking the time. I want to let you know there'll be a quick survey as you exit the webinar, and I hope that you will fill that out so that we can improve our events. Once again, thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you for joining us. We hope to see you at another AYPF webinar soon.